Brett works as a process improvement engineer for California-based organic produce farm and delivery service, Farm Fresh to You. He worked for FedEx for close to 20 years. He has an engineering degree from UC Berkeley and a master's degree from London School of Economics. He's been a Rotary member for 12 years and is currently the Davis Sunset Rotary Club's president for 23-24. And he served at Davis City Council for 8 years and was the mayor of Davis from 2018 to 2020. And Davis is the town just 10 miles west. I gotta remember what coast I'm on now. West of me in Woodland. And so it's an awesome college town, but being a mayor of it's a big job. It's a significant town when you add in all the students. So he enjoys volunteering at the animal shelter. Yay, animal shelter. And he's rescued several dogs, and he has a 14-year-old son. And although he has no direct connection to Ukraine, he has visited there a few times in Poland and is going to share some of those experiences with us today. So Brett, we're really excited to have you here today.
Oh, well, thank you for inviting me to speak. I appreciate it. And so, yeah, don't be shy about letting me know if I start pushing against time limits. I understand that we typically try to keep it to 20 minutes with time for Q&A after that, if I have that correct. Okay, so the topic of my little talk today is the power of Rotary, and it's a different aspect of Rotary than I anticipated, and it's been sort of interesting. So I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully this works well. Let's see. Here we go. And all right. Can you see my screen? Okay. All right. So let's go to presentation mode. All right. The power of Rotary. So my story starts. The war had started in Ukraine almost 2 years ago in February, the end of February 2022. And I wanted to do something about it. I saw this stuff on the news about all the refugees and pouring across the border and just all these sort of heartbreaking images. And I didn't have any connection to Ukraine. I knew that having been on the city council of Davis, we had a sister city in Ukraine, Uman, Ukraine. But I'll bore you with a little bit of information. So I had planned to go to England and visit friends and drink beer in a pub, hang out in the pubs and drink beer around March of that year. And one of the silver linings of COVID is that the airlines don't have change fees anymore. So if you have, you booked a trip to go to Vancouver, Canada, and you decided, well, I don't want to go to Vancouver, Canada, you could cancel that trip and you would have a credit. You wouldn't get your money back, but you get a credit. And then you could use that credit for a different flight. In the old days, there would be a penalty fee where your $800, there was a $150 subtraction. Whereas most airlines today, if you cancel your $800 flight, you still have $800 of credit. So I was seeing this stuff going on in Ukraine, and I thought, gosh, I feel a little awkward and kind of selfish going to England to drink beer while all these people are streaming across the border with all their kind of worldly possessions strapped to their back and running across the border with their kids and everything. So I was able to change my flight. And I booked I had never been to Poland before. I'd never been to Ukraine. I booked a flight to Poland, and I went to the border. And what you see here, this far left, I don't know if my mouse is showing up, but this is the actual border crossing where people walk across. So this is the Polish side, and over there is Ukraine. They walk across with their suitcases and kids and all their possessions. And one of the things that we did in Davis in March, just after the war started, is we did a fundraiser. And we did a fundraiser, and we weren't sure who to raise money for. And it was kind of tricky. So there were entities like the Red Cross, and they're a wonderful organization. But many of us remember how 5 years after Hurricane Katrina, the Red Cross sort of announced, oh, by the way, we still have $10 million of Katrina relief funds that we never spent. You're like, but wait, we gave money, wait, but there's still need there. I mean, the people in Katrina, there was still some unmet needs, and that felt like, I don't know if I want to give it to UNICEF or the Red Cross and just hope that eventually it trickles down to the people in need. And then there were another group of organizations, super sketchy fund for Ukraine.com. And you'd look and go, have you ever heard of this super sketchy fund for Ukraine.com? I haven't, but their website, pops up. Um, and so it was kind of hard to figure out who to donate to actually, we raised this money. We raised about $10,000 and we weren't sure who to give it to. Eventually, we landed on World Central Kitchen. And World Central Kitchen kind of fit the bill of large, legitimate organization with capability, but was on the ground, being nimble, providing hot meals for people crossing the border. Anyway, so that experience made me realize it would be useful for me to go to the border and actually see who is doing good work there and who we should try to fundraise for and who could make use of additional money. So it's one thing to be a small organization and you're doing fine, but if somebody gives you more money, are they able to then turn that into some sort of useful action? And then we also wanted to avoid entities that weren't really doing what they said they were doing or didn't have any capabilities. So I went to the border. So I paid my own way, went to the border, and I happened to be there on a sunny blue sky day. But what was interesting is the week and a half before it was pouring rain for 3 days straight, and people would have to line up for hours and hours on the Ukrainian side and kind of come across. But this was in April, so the crowds had been reduced. Importantly, this picture here, you can kind of see the logo, but this is World Central Kitchen. And if you notice from the picture, I probably should have tiled the picture slightly differently, but there's chairs and there's tables over a little further down. This looks quite compelling. All this food is free. So this is at a place called Przemyśl in Poland, which is the first rail crossing from Ukraine. So this is the first train station that you would hit if you're taking the train from Ukraine to Poland. And so it looks quite pleasant. And it took a little while because I also went to the car crossing where cars would cross. And there was this big pile of clothes for people up here. Oh, so this actually is a car crossing. This is the railroad crossing. But anyway, so people come this way. There are a big pile of clothes. So the idea is, oh, people would need some clothes. So it's a nice idea. Um, but it was a big pile of clothes, and I don't know if we've all been to the Gap store, right? Where you look at a shirt and within 3 seconds of you putting the shirt back, even though you've kind of folded it, it looks really nice. It's never good enough. Like the Gap employees, I don't know what it is. Maybe they get paid for every shirt they fold, and that's why you just sort of stare at a shirt and then they come and they refold it. So there's this big pile of clothes, and I was just sitting there thinking, wait a minute. Like, imagine you're checking into the airport. And you had your carry-on bag, your checked bag, but you're just going to the counter. You haven't checked your bags in. And somebody says, "Hey, would you like a flat screen TV? Here, let me hand it to you." The timing is wrong. So what's happening here is that people are streaming across. They have one hand holding the hand of their kid, one hand pulling a suitcase. They have a backpack on. I mean, they're just totally loaded down. And they haven't gotten to where they're going to spend the night. This is just sort of this intermediate place. And then there's this big pile of clothes. And so on a couple levels, the process improvement engineer in me was really offended because the clothes weren't even separated by male or female. They weren't even separated by kid or, by size or pants, or it was just this big pile of clothes. And the volunteers that were just standing there doing nothing. And so it was just, that would be an example of well-meaning but not so effective, and also a little bit demeaning to the people. I mean, do you really want to be sorting through just big pile of clothes? I mean, life is hard enough. The proper place for that, there were the school gymnasiums were set up for overnight shelter. So people are sleeping on the gym floors. So once you set down your suitcase, once your kid, you know, goes to the bathroom, gets a drink of water, you can then realize like, gosh, I've been wearing the same sweatshirt for 3 days. Let's go look for some clothes. Anyway, so I saw some entities like that. But what really impressed me in a long roundabout way, using up a good chunk of my 20 minutes, is there were entities like World Central Kitchen. Like this, they treated people with a lot of dignity and respect. It was first rate. You just showed up, you picked what you wanted to eat, and then you went and had a place to sit down. They had thought about it. They had sort of, rather than me hand you a bowl of soup with nowhere to sit while you're kind of clutching your suitcase, here, go sit down, have your bowl of soup, it'll be good. And my own pet interest, no pun intended, is I volunteer at the animal shelter. So I wanted to see, hey, what was going on? And so this group from Poland was there. They were handing out cat carriers, dog carriers, food. And then across the railroad tracks, there was a veterinarian providing vaccinations and microchips so that the pets would be allowed into the European Union. And so through me being there, I was able to connect with this nonprofit, Polish-based nonprofit, and we did a fundraiser for them when I came back. So here's where we get to the power of Rotary. So I came back and I told my story, and I got very different reactions. Some people were, wait, you paid your own money? You weren't there with a group? Like, wait, I don't understand. Like, why would you do that? That makes no sense. I mean, they didn't say it makes no sense, but they would say, well, why did you do that? You spent your own money, you went by yourself? Like, huh? And then others were like, oh, wow, that's really wonderful. What did you see? Or, things like that. And what I realized was my Rotary friends were the, wow, that's really wonderful. And they didn't ask why, but it was wonderful. Oh, and what did you learn? Or what did you see? And did you find some groups that were worth supporting? And the non-Rotary friends were really stuck on this. You spent your own money to go there? Like, what's wrong with you? Like, did you get hit in the head with a baseball or something? Um, and so I realized the power of Rotary is I don't have to explain that helping others. I don't have to explain like the idea of helping others. It just comes naturally to Rotary. And it's not, Rotary at some level is some level of networking, and there's that, but the overall ethos is helping others. And the idea of taking action, whether that's helping a neighbor, rake the leaves and help someone with yard work or fix a fence or doing something more globally. Um, and so this trip led to me doing another fundraiser where this was in December of a year ago, December, where we raised money for our sister city for generators. And these aren't these are pictures of the actual generators being moved. And these aren't the generators. When I describe it, you get to see the picture. When I describe it to people who haven't seen the picture, I say these are not like the generators that look like a lawnmower. These are the kind that power buildings. And kind of long story short, um, well, maybe long story, not exactly short, but we held a fundraiser, joint fundraiser with Rotary and Oddfellows, and we raised money to purchase generators for our sister city. The great news was we raised money, and then I thought that would be the hard part. But during the middle of last winter, there was an extreme shortage of high quality generators. So I called around all over Europe, Spain, Germany, Holland, Poland, you name it, Italy, trying to find high quality generators. And eventually I found a supplier in Poland. It's called Promach. They're a affiliate with Generac, which is a US company. And through a Rotary connection, actually, let me back up. During my first trip to the Polish border, I'd reached out to the Rotary Club in Lviv, Ukraine, and one of their members and I met briefly, just for a half hour in person. But through him, I was able to arrange for transportation of these generators. And one of the things that we hear about about Ukraine is, oh, there's corruption and things like that. Yeah, I don't disagree. From what I heard, I haven't experienced it firsthand, but I take people at their word, and and so my interactions had been online and email and wiring money, and there is something very scary about when you're wiring $30,000 just to a series of digits, and somebody's provided you some bank account info, and you have to press send. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, my Rotary friends are going to be so angry at me when they find out I've been scammed and I've just sent money to some person who's in somewhere else, and this isn't going to actually end up going to the right place. Through my contact at the Lviv, Ukraine Rotary, I learned about how I could go into Ukraine. And at the time, it seemed fairly reasonable to do so. And so this is a picture from the bus. So you fly into Poland, and then from Poland, you can take a bus into Ukraine. And so this is the border crossing picture out of the window. This is a building in Lviv, Ukraine. Lviv is a very pretty city. Anyway, so this is a person who a former Air Force person. His name is Tom, who's from this area, who has been doing volunteer work in Ukraine. Through one of the fundraising efforts, I got a chance to meet him, and I told him I was going to our sister city in Uman. I wanted to go see the generators in person, make sure they were there, and so I went. It's about a 16-hour bus ride to get to our sister city from the border. Anyway, so I went in person, and this is a picture of the Lviv Rotary Club, one of their meetings. Uh, I'm kind of over here. I had originally met them via joining one of their meetings via Zoom, kind of like I'm doing today, and learned a little bit about them. And one of my secret dreams was to actually go in person. And sort of about a year later, I was able to do that. And I went, and here's a woman from Texas. We had this little battle, so little rivalry. So I brought some California flags, and she brought Texas flags. So we handed out the state of California and state of Texas flags to the people in Lviv, Ukraine. So the picture on the right is, I'll tell you a little bit more about it in a second. Um, but there are people like you and me, just but struggling through a war that's really devastating in many respects. So here I am on my visit in May, and this is one of the projects they're working on. They are taking, so air raids occur, and they occur fairly frequently, and air raid alarms occur. And the way it works with these high-speed missiles, they're not sure where the missiles are going to hit. So there's these alerts. The kids have to go into the basements. And so a year on, this is what a basement looks like in a 1950s Soviet sort of built school. And what they have been doing is they've been refurbishing it, putting a proper floor so it's not a dirt floor, painting the walls, better lighting, putting some ventilation in, because so here's the kind of the before, here's the after, because these kids can be here for the whole school day. And it's not just, for a few minutes or an hour, they can be there all day. And the thing about Ukraine, which really kind of threw me a little bit, I'm just kind of checking my time, so don't want to go over. Uh, it's it's a nice place. I was recently in Japan, and what struck me about Japan, wherever I looked, I knew that I was in Japan. I was somewhere different. It didn't, if at any point of the 24 hours, if you just sort of stopped and said, "Where are you?" and you sort of looked around, you knew you were somewhere else. When I was in Ukraine, it felt like could be anywhere in the US. I mean, here's a lake, here's these buildings. It didn't feel so different. But one of the perks of being a former mayor is I got to meet the mayor of our sister city, and met with the chancellor of the university there. We can tell a little bit more about that later, cognizant of the time. So this is our sister city, Uman, Ukraine, and it looks quite nice. But here's the twist. So same city, but occasionally missiles hit and kill a bunch of people. And here's a memorial, some of the people killed. And just like, when we do little things, especially gravesides along the highways, we'll put a cross and, little stuffed animals or things like that. And it's very heartbreaking. And anyway, again, this is what it looks like. So I just pulled this up. This is just recently. These are the air raid alerts that this is of, yesterday. So this would be Cherkasy is where our sister city is. And so one started at 8:37. It hadn't ended, so it was active. So here was the night before, 9:53 to 10:22, so not for very long, but same day. So this would have impacted, well, because of a Sunday, it wouldn't impact kids. But you can see that on a regular basis, and these are, depending on where you live, these are the sound of air raid sirens. So I lived in Tennessee for a while. We had tornado alert sirens that would come on, and they're loud. And many of these things are at night, and you're supposed to go to the bomb shelter. So go to your basement, kind of like if there's a tornado, go to your basement type of thing. And just to give a sense, I texted with one of the people, and this was from in the summer, but so this was when I was back home. I said, hope you had a good weekend. But if you write what she says, this is kind of the toll that the war is taking on people. And it's really heartbreaking. And I get to go be there for a few weeks or a week and then go, okay, goodbye, I'm going home now. And a lot of people are stuck there. So getting back to kind of the theme of what we're talking about, the power of Rotary, the Rotary folks there are redoing the basement of schools so that kids can be in an environment that is more conducive to being a little kid. So not in a dark, dingy, basement on a dirt floor, but actual proper classroom, and the teachers continue to teach their lessons. And so this is really wonderful. Again, just looking at my watch to make sure I'm not over on time. The power of Rotary for me has been when I come back from these trips, they're like, people are, what can we do? How can we help? Not, you spent your own money again. Wait, and did work give you time off? Like, no, I had to use my vacation time. And they just can't get past that. And they're not selfish people. It's just a different way of thinking. But the Rotarians that I talk to, they're more of a, wow, that's wonderful. Is there anything we can do to help? And it's like, yeah, we're going to do a fundraiser this summer. And, if you buy a ticket, that would be great. But it's been very interesting. And I know, Rotary isn't about politics or, religion. I would say it's pretty similar to kind of that. Um, yeah, I'll go there. If you go to church and people are very supportive of some of the activities, and I'm not saying which church or whatever, but just sort of general camaraderie and just sort of some things are a given. And I find Rotary to be that same way, which is, this whole notion of service above self. It's not a foreign concept. It really is this, it's a real thing in Rotary. And that has been really empowering, because if I had to spend my days explaining why I'm doing this all the time, it would just wear me down and eventually I might give up. Anyway, so with my last couple minutes, I just want to talk about what the next thing I'm working on. When I first went there in March, I discovered, if you look up on the left, there are these dogs that are just out and about. I liken it to kind of like we're used to feral cats, where there might be a cat that lives in a park and people know that that's where the cat lives. In Uman specifically, probably throughout Ukraine, there are dogs that live on the street. And when I saw a pack of dogs like this, I was like, uh-oh, watch out. But they're friendly. And it's kind of like if you go to a park and you sit there and a squirrel comes up to you. The squirrel knows that people equal food, and they kind of come up and the squirrel isn't attacking you. They're just sort of waiting for you to, hopefully give them a snack of some sort. And so this is me, and I was quite impressed with all these dogs. And so I asked about, is there a local animal rescue group? And that's what these pictures are from. And I have a little video which may work. We'll see if it works. And so this is a shelter put together by volunteers. And it's just gives you a sense of kind of the level of resources they have. And what was interesting is the shelter was really clean. The dogs were well cared for. The kennels were open air in terms of they weren't, um, oops, they weren't, yeah, they weren't, it wasn't fancy, but they were doing this good work. And when I came back, I was really excited about this idea of raising money for them. And my friends were like, well, I think we should focus on people first. I'm like, okay. So done fundraisers for generators. We've done a fundraiser for a van for disabled folks, wheelchair folks, sort of a mobility van. We also have set up a scholarship fund for kids who have lost a parent due to death or disability or capture in the war for that sister city university. So the kids there. And so now my, no pun intended or pun intended, pet project is I'm now raising money for the animal rescue group to help them pay for the veterinarian bills and the dog food bills, because they feed close to 70 dogs a day. And most of those are just out in the community. So there'll be a dog that lives by the gas station, and they'll go out there and they'll bring a bowl of food and a bowl of water and things like that. But again, I wouldn't be able to do this without the moral support of Rotarians. And so for me, that's the power of Rotary. It's not what I initially would have thought would have been the power of Rotary, but there is some of that too. I have connected with the Lviv Rotary Club, and they have provided support in terms of logistics, in terms of how do I get to the middle of Ukraine, and so they have been very helpful in helping me find safer ways to travel. So that's so there's a question: how far is Lviv from Kharkiv? I should have a picture of Ukraine up. It's, call it 1,000 miles. So Uman is right in the very center of Ukraine. So if you draw a line east-west and north-south, so on the line from Kyiv down to Odessa, kind of is a straight line down, and then from Lviv to the far east is a straight line. Uman's sort of at the crossroads. So Lviv is far west, and then from there, it's call it an 8-hour car ride or 14-hour bus ride to get to Uman. So yeah, that's my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions, time permitting. And I'll let
Yeah.
Julia let me know how we're doing on time.
Absolutely. You are doing great. We have plenty of time for questions. And that was a fabulous presentation of just, how you, saw a need, and then, you're doing that by yourself, and then to bring Rotarians in. And so I'm just going to start off the questions with a couple things. But the first is just because I know your club, but these people don't know your club. The Davis Sunset Club is the smallest club in Davis, and the youngest club in Davis. And currently, how many members do you guys have?
So we're up to 23. We've gone from 16 to 23 in the past year. So I've been worked with the previous president the last 6 months of her term and the beginning of my term, because we were on the verge of collapsing. Because with the 16 that we had, we probably only had 6 people who would attend a meeting on a good day. And yes. And so our number one priority has been finding people who would be good additions to the club. And so we're up to 23, which is good. And my goal is by the time I end my presidency to be up to 30. And this is not just, any random people, but,
Right.
there's lots of good people in the community who would really enjoy being part of Rotary.
Right. Right, that's awesome. We like to say we're small but mighty, and that's kind of where we're at
Yeah.
too. So I will open up if you guys have questions. You want to either raise your hand or raise your digital hand. Ken.
Yes, Brett, that was terrific. I love it when somebody makes a presentation that makes me think about things that I've never thought before. So the first thing that came up for me was pointing out that the power of Rotary is that we have one thing in common, and that's service. And the other that you pointed out was that we have many different skills. And we collectively put those skills together to do things. The other thing that came up for me was this idea of a sister city. I don't know how many clubs have sister clubs where you join with some other club and just establish a relationship. So, I mean, that's another way, particularly with an e-club, we could have another sister club as an e-club. The idea of why don't people get the idea of service? I mean, you made that really clear. And we know the concept of giving back. People understand that. But why is it that we wait so long to give back? Why don't we just start giving earlier? And so giving is, I believe, a part of everyone. The question is, what triggers it for people to actually want to serve others? So thank you for pulling all that up for me.
Oh, I like your idea of a sister club. I'll have to bring it up to our club because I think that's kind of a great idea.
And Brett, can you talk a little about the sister city? So is the sister city something that has been with Davis for a long time, or
Yes.
is it fairly new?
Yeah, so it started in the 1990s, and Davis has, call it 7 sister cities, and a lot of it is sort of due to the pet interest of whoever's on the city council at the time. In the 90s, there were lots of exchanges between the cities. So there was kind of at the fall of the Soviet Union, there was a lot of curiosity about the former Soviet Union. So we had some teachers, K through 12 teachers go there, and they had some K through 12 teachers come to visit us. But when we went to raise money when the war started, the people who had been involved had sort of aged out, and we couldn't really find anybody who the connections had been totally lost. And so through working with my contact at the Lviv Rotary Club and then a recent Ukrainian immigrant to Davis, a refugee actually, we were able to reestablish connection to our sister city. And so that link has been reestablished, and yeah, it's kind of exciting. And we've rejuvenated the sister city relationship on the Davis side. So we have 5 or 6 members of people who are actively interested in, keeping that relationship alive.
David, go ahead.
Not a question, but I want to make a comment. One of the words that was used was heartbreaking. And I find it particularly heartbreaking. 7 years ago, when I was a club president, I would start the meetings with a short 2-3 minute Rotary video about projects around the world. Several times I featured projects in Ukraine. Ukraine, for a long time, has had a very active and very productive, impactful Rotary organization. So I think this war is just heartbreaking, and I think whatever we can do to help, we've got to do. So congratulations, kudos to you.
Oh, thank you.
Florence, you had your hand up.
This is I was actually very interested when Michael said that you guys were having a guest from Ukraine, and coincidentally, the president of Ukraine is currently in Washington and meeting with our president. And so the other reason why I was interested was there's a young lady in Kharkiv, Kharkiv, with whom we have been trying to bring her here, and we already got approved to sponsor her. And but how are we going to get her from there here is the thing. And so I don't even know. We're trying. There's a lady who's a Rotarian in Charlotte who I connected with, but and we've been kind of sending her some money so that she could buy food and things, but we're now to the next step to where we're trying to get her from Kharkiv here. So I didn't even know if the Rotarians there might be helpful or not. So that's my question.
So the bus system actually is still functioning in Ukraine. And so I'm planning to go back in January, and there's a Flixbus, Flix. They operate in the US, but they also operate in Ukraine, much to my surprise. It's kind of like a Greyhound-like service. And the bus I was on that dropped me off in Uman was on its way to Odessa. Odessa is a bit a ways from Kharkiv, but it seems like if somebody has a sponsor that they could get, there is a pretty active bus network. And so basically that person would need to get to Poland, and then from Poland they can fly. And so yeah, the main, Kharkiv it's a high conflict area. But if she goes a few hundred miles west, then she'll be in a much safer area of the country. And then from there, it's pretty straightforward to get to Poland. Not knowing the specifics of her situation, but yeah. So the trick is to get to Poland, because there are flights to Krakow and Warsaw, by KLM and British Airways and all the major airlines.
Thank you. Maybe you could send me your contact information if you're agreeable to that. And since you're going back in January sometime, maybe I could connect with you and have you, I don't know how that would work, but
Yeah, so Julia, feel free to share my contact info, and Florence, I can connect you with the Rotary Club in Lviv.
okay.
And having Ukrainian language skills, which they have, would probably be of greatest assistance. So I can provide you a contact there that they should be able to direct you and the others to the right people.
Okay, thank you very much.
And
thank you for the work you're doing there.
Sure.
Lawrence, if you stay on at the end of the meeting, I'll help connect you.
Okay, thank you, Julia.
And Candace, go ahead. You had a question?
Yes, I just wanted to make sure that we highlighted Franca's post in the chat. She and Alberto have been very proactive in working with Mary and Martha Services, which has done extraordinary work in helping specifically Ukrainian refugees, and knows all the ropes of how to do that. So that's also an excellent resource, and I'm sure Mary and Martha, it's not just a local organization; they have reach all over the country. But Brett, I have a question about the dogs, the puppies.
Yeah.
And my question is more, because they are so tame and friendly, I have a feeling that a lot of them just have lost their families for a variety of reasons. Would you say that that's probably true?
Some, yeah. I would. So Uman is sort of this crossroads where a lot of people fleeing the active war zone on the east kind of flee to. I think some dogs and cats were left behind. Others, just like here in Davis, we have stray dogs and cats and things, and so it's kind of the combination of both. And yeah, sadly, there's not enough homes for all the animals that need homes. Well, that's been in my experience, here in Davis and other places. But yes, they are tame and friendly. And as I said, my initial reaction was, you see 5 or 6 dogs headed your way, kind of loose on the street, and then like, uh-oh, should we start running, or now what? And they just come over and they just are friendly and they're just looking for food. And I mentioned the gas station dog. There was actually a specific dog at a gas station. I went in and bought a hot dog at the gas station, came out and handed them a hot dog. And but yeah, I'm trying to create a more sustained level of steadier funding for this animal rescue group, because we're getting close to 2 years on, and they're not extremely wealthy there. I mean, it's they're not poor, but there's not lots of disposable income, and especially since the war has reduced people's resources.
Right. And I'm sure that, dog food is probably not as easy to come by as some of the other things that get shipped in as well. Julie, you had a question.
Yeah, thanks, Brett. One of the things that we hear about with regards to Ukraine is the resiliency of the people. And I wondered if you could share from your perspective about how are the people and how are they feeling about the future of this war and what that means for their country.
So, based upon my conversations with people, it's sort of interesting in that, oh, how's it going? Oh, it's going okay. And then you sort of ask a little more, and then most people have had like one of their children's classmates killed in the war. So it may not be their child, but it's close. It's not maybe their child, but it's one of their child's classmates. And one of the things that is hard to understand, the US, we've been in some wars, but we've never, not except for the Civil War, really had to worry about, will our home or city or town be overrun by the quote unquote enemy? And given what had, not to get political, but what seems to be well documented in terms of the occupied areas where the Russians have been, there's a lot of brutality that has happened. And so there's a real visceral and objective fear of being overrun. And it could be as simple as China deciding to give the Russians weapons. And I can imagine this current question of U.S. funding is also making people feel less secure. But in terms of the resilience, they don't really have any choice. The notion of surrender, they don't want to live kind of under a Soviet occupation, and so I think they're in it, and it is very stressful. That that little text that I shared was just kind of an example, which is there's this surface level, but it's really draining and heartbreaking. In terms of resilience, everyone that I've interacted with is really supportive of the US and the United Kingdom for supporting them. And they want to fight, and nobody has mentioned anything about, let's just make a peace agreement and we'll just call it good as is. They really want their whole country to be independent and free. And so, and in terms of, I guess, that sense of resilience, they understand they need to fight, and they're fighting for, their own personal security and their country. And the people I've talked to really view Ukraine as an independent country, not as, somebody else's country. I hope that answers the question, kind of. But
Yeah, thank you so much.
It's just based upon my individual conversations with people. And
yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? We're getting on to one. Well, Brett, thank you. I'm going to turn it back over to Candace for her little end of meeting thing, and I will connect Florence with your email. And really, truly appreciate you sharing with us today, and wish you luck with the rest of your presidency, but also with Davis and the fundraising that you're doing for Ukraine too. It's definitely needed work. So
yeah, and thank you for having me. And as I say, the wonderful thing about Rotary is we're action-oriented people who, help our neighbors, and whether they're next door or far away. And
right. All part of the same family.
Yeah.
Candace, are you muted?
I am muted. Thank you very much. The lips were moving and there was no sound.
Love it.
Happens a lot. So anyway, Brett, thank you so very much for all of your service in so many ways. And we have a couple of members who are dedicated to making sure that our members, our guests feel appreciated. And this book was selected specifically for you and your contributions. And it goes into one of the little free libraries in the upstate of South Carolina. So thank you so very much for all that you do.